Dr. Alan Mendoza, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society, joins me now. Thank you very, very much. Should charities start more at home, do you think?
Well, I think we've already had cuts in the last few years to the overseas aid budget, which made sense given what you've just said, that charity does need to begin at home, and we had a financial crisis that needed dealing with. I don't think we should stop foreign aid completely, but clearly the idea that we should be supplying money to China at any level is ridiculous, as you pointed out. This is, after all, an economic superpower and is finding plenty of money to spend on bad outcomes. And indeed, other countries we should be monitoring very carefully whether these are democracies, dictatorships, anything like that. And in reality, I thought that when we had the Ficado department created, the idea was to marry more our development goals with our foreign policy goals as well.
Can we not have a pretty straightforward system where we look at it and go, have you got a nuclear programme? Have you got a space programme? All right, we're not going to send you any of our cash.
Yep, I think that's a perfectly acceptable position to take. If you're spending money on advanced military or even if it's civilian functions along those lines, why on earth should we be sending you money for humanitarian purposes? Spend your military money on humanitarian purposes instead.
And it's important to note, because a lot of people have been getting in touch saying, well, hang on a minute, we've got all this money going in foreign aid and we're spending loads of money every single day on the Channel migrant crisis. I mean, we are spending loads of money on that, but a proportion of that, a good chunk of it, is actually coming from our foreign aid budget. I find it bizarre, though, that we've even got homeless military veterans and we've got people struggling between heating and eating. And the justification that we can have for sending 180 million quid or whatever to Afghanistan, or South Africa's received quite a lot as well, when we have got people right here who need the money. Do you think, Dr. Allen, that it is starting to look a little bit like we've got the money for everyone else, but not our own?
No, I wouldn't go that far, Patrick. Now, I'm quite clear that we should be spending money in a more sensible way on overseas aid, but there is a value to spending it. And let's just remind everyone what that value is. The value of spending overseas aid is to make sure that you can contain crises in other countries and stop refugee movements out of those countries into other places, including our own. The purpose is, if you have a famine or something similar or a natural disaster, you want to be assisting development or helping economic growth in other countries, because realistically, if we look at the arc of development over the course of the coming century, if we don't improve conditions in said countries, then people will increasingly be mobile and come here. So we're both doing a moral thing by helping people, but it's also in our national self-interest, because it means that you're going to improve prosperity in other places and keep migrants from coming here when they wouldn't need to be doing so. So I think we've got to get that clear. That's the point. But we mustn't be wasting money on countries that don't need our help and are misusing their own budgets for military, space, other purposes that we wouldn't agree with.
Yeah, indeed. Dr. Allen, look, thank you very, very much. Always a pleasure to have you on the show and have your insight there. Dr. Alan Mendoza, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society.